Thank you. Good morning. Please be seated, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, our jury has joined us back in the court. Welcome back. I hope you all had a good weekend recess. And so I do have to make the inquiry of you, like I do every morning, whether or not any of you have been exposed to any media coverage. If you've been exposed to any media coverage, if you'd please raise your hand for me. All right, thank you. Our record will reflect that none of the jurors raised a hand. Also, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be one of those parts of the trial where the parties have agreed that the defense can call witnesses out of order for witness convenience purposes. And so we'll be hearing from, I think, several defense witnesses at this point, and then we'll switch back to the prosecution's case. So, but once again, that's all by agreement of the parties, just to help things move more efficiently. So your first witness this morning, Ms. Smith?
Is Wayne D'Amico.
All right, thank you. Good morning, sir. If you could approach, I'll give you an oath before you testify. We have a black cord stretched out across your walkway as well. If you'd raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, thank you. If you have a seat in the green chair for us, please. Thank you. And then, Ms. Smith, you can proceed whenever you're ready. Thank you. You're welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you please state your name?
Wayne D'Amico,
How do you spell D'Amico?
D''Amico.
And what is it that you do for a living?
In auto sales and leasing,
Okay, and how long have you been in that?
about 27 years.
Did you know Paige Bergfeld?
Yes, ma'am.
When did you meet her?
Early 2000s, 2003, 4, right around there, I guess.
And how did you meet her?
I sold her a car, a van.
Okay. So, does that mean, tell me a little bit more about that. How you came to meet her by selling her a van?
She pulled up to the dealership, and I met her out front, introduced myself, we talked, and found some needs and wants, and found the vehicle she wanted to buy.
Okay. So she started out as a customer of yours wanting to buy a car?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you became friends with her from there?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when you, do you recall being interviewed by law enforcement about this matter in 2012?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay, and do you recall, was that Investigator McClellan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you actually told Investigator McClellan that you had met Ms. Bergfeld through her escort business, right?
Well, that's what he was asking me at the time. I mean, I didn't go back way back when. I met her at the dealership, sold her a car. I didn't even know what she did for a living, other than on her application, she sold Pampered Chef.
Okay. So your testimony today is that you met her through the car dealership, but that you told the law enforcement officer that you met her through the...
I think it was the way he had questioned it. Do you know Paige through her business? So,
Okay.
and I didn't buy any Pampered Chef.
I see. No, never mind. Okay, so it must have just been a misunderstanding between you and the investigator as to why he thinks you met her through the business the escort business, when you actually met her through the car business?
Right.
Okay. Now, how would you describe your friendship with Ms. Bergfeld?
It actually became a pretty good friendship. I was going through some hard times when we had met, and she was easy to talk to, and as time went on, we just, we got closer as friends. I mean, we didn't, like hang out daily, but, she needed someone to talk to. She'd holler at me on the phone and vice versa, and she'd come to the dealership once in a while, just pull in and bring me a soda or something, and so that kind of friend.
Okay. And would she also sometimes come over to your house late at night to hang out?
Yes, ma'am, she would.
And was that after calls that she had with other clients?
That's something, but I would imagine, yeah, based on the time.
Now, so is it fair to say that this friendship lasted about 7 years? Or that you knew her about 7 years?
Knew, yeah.
Now, did you also pay Ms. Bergfeld to have sex with you?
No, ma'am.
You didn't?
No.
Okay.
No, not
You did pay her money, though, right?
at times, yes.
Okay, and what was that money for?
she had an escorting service, so, they go to dinner, go to a movie, sit around, talk, whatever you wanted.
Okay, so no sexual activity then?
I didn't say that.
Okay.
But it
So-
wasn't specifically for that. And so if she came over, whatever happened, happened. There wasn't anything specific. There wasn't a guideline that we went by.
Okay, so you paid money to Ms. Bergfeld to hang out with you? Is that a yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then sometimes it would involve sexual activity?
2 adults, yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay. And what did that sexual activity entail?
Guess it depended on the time of day. I mean, there was nothing specific. Again, nothing specific. Just
Okay.
based on our friendship and stuff, it was sometimes it was just laying there hugging on each other, and sometimes it went through to intercourse. So,
Okay, so you did sometimes have sex with Ms. Bergfeld?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you paid her money to have?
Not every time.
Okay, so sometimes you had sex with Ms. Bergfeld for free?
She would come over sometimes just to hang out because she had a bad day or whatever. And again, we might sit around and have a glass of wine and,
And then have sex?
well, not necessarily all the time, ma'am, but it occurred.
Okay. And when sexual intercourse occurred, you paid Ms. Bergfeld for money?
Not every time, ma'am.
It's okay. So sometimes it was for free and sometimes it was for money?
If I called her and set up the call, then there would be money exchanged for companionship.
I see.
If she called me and said she was having a bad day and she wanted a kick back, then
And that evolved into sexual activity, that was free? Is that,
if that's that's fine. Yeah, that's a good way to say it, I guess.
okay. Now, and so then there were also times, I guess I just want to be clear, there were also times when you paid her and no sex occurred?
Correct.
Okay, she would just come over and hang out and you would pay her for her time?
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Now, so it sounds like you two had this professional relationship where you paid her money for companionship and sexual activity, but that you guys were also friends and talked about your problems.
Correct. She also paid me when she bought cars, so.
Okay.
So there's that business side of it as well.
How many cars?
Just the one, I'm just saying
Oh,
that.
okay.
That was also a transaction.
And did you talk to her as she was going through her divorce about some of that hardship?
Some of it, she didn't really talk a lot about it, but she would just need an ear to listen and a shoulder to lean on, so sometimes I was that person.
Okay. At times, did you, okay, at times, did you consider Ms. Bergfeld to be like your best friend?
Bess was that's not the right, I wouldn't say best friend, but she's a very good friend.
Okay, so you've never referred to her to be like your best friend?
Well, I'd refer to her that way, but just, I mean, somebody in this courtroom could be my best friend or a good friend.
Okay.
So, I mean, it may be a way I referred to her.
Okay.
She wasn't a bad friend.
Sure, sure. When did you last see Ms. Bergfeld?
Probably late 06, 07-ish, would be about right,
Okay, do you remember when she disappeared?
based on the news and stuff, yeah.
Okay. How much prior to her disappearance did you last see her?
4 months, 5 months? Is that about, I guess that's about right.
4 to 5 months before?
I would say that's about right, yeah.
Okay. Did you tell law enforcement in 2012 that it was about 3 months prior?
3 months, 4 months, ma'am, that's quite a ways. I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, so just saying, you know, it was 3 months, 3.5 months, 4 months. It was
Okay.
within a half a year.
Okay. And then when you testified in this case before, you testified to a few months, right?
Yes, ma'am.
When you talked to, do you remember, okay, I'm sorry. So you talked to law enforcement in 2012. Do you remember also talking to law enforcement investigator Havenstrite and the district attorney this summer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you spoke with them this summer, did you tell them that the last time you saw Ms. Bergfeld was sometime in 2005 or 2006?
That sounds about right. Like I said, date-wise, I don't have exact times, but 2005, 6, yeah. I mean, I just don't have exact dates. She wasn't on my calendar, nor was anybody else, so I just, you know, you're jogging my memory hard that way. I just don't know exact dates.
Okay, that's fine. But do you understand that 2005 or 2006 would be a year or two before she disappeared?
So date-wise, ma'am, I don't have, I don't know what to tell you. We went through this last time as well. Date-wise, time-wise,
Okay, so a few months.
a few months.
Were there times when, is it fair to say that your relationship with Ms. Bergfeld, maybe your financial relationship with Ms. Bergfeld could get a little complicated since sometimes you spent time for free, sometimes you didn't, sometimes you had sex for free, sometimes you didn't. Was that sometimes complicated to square up the finances with her?
Not really, not necessarily. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. You owe me or you don't.
Okay.
And, you know, sometimes we made arrangements for whatever, but, you know, might be a week till my payday or something.
I see.
But, you know, Paige was on top of her finances.
Okay. So it was always pretty clear amongst the two of you if this was a paid session or an unpaid session?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there times, however, when Ms. Bergfeld stayed longer than planned, and you would then have to settle up the finances with her later?
If it was a meeting or a time that we spent that I initiated and it was an escort call,
Okay.
yes. But if she came over just to hang out, to relax, whatever, and she wanted to stay longer, she couldn't charge me. She was just
I
kicking back.
see.
So if it was initiated by me as I'm making the call, of
Okay.
course.
So if it was initiated by you, so there was an understanding that you would be paying her, were there times when she stayed maybe longer than the call was set for, and then she expected you to pay her for that extra time that you maybe considered free time?
Well, I knew where I stood, and if she stayed longer and I asked her to stay longer, that's pretty cut and dry. I knew what I was getting into.
Did you tell Investigator McClellan back in 2012 that there were times when she stayed longer than planned and you'd have to settle up the finances later?
Judge, I'm going to object to this as impeachment of a collateral matter and irrelevant. I'm not sure what the relevance is to any of the issues we're here for.
Ms. Smith?
Well, I think that the relevance is a potential motive if he is having financial disagreements with Ms. Bergfeld, which is what he indicated to the investigator in 2012.
The objection's overruled.
So the question, Mr. D'Amico, is what you told the investigator back in 2012. So did you tell Investigator McClellan back then that when Ms. Bergfeld stayed longer than planned, there were times where you would have to then settle up the finances with her later?
Yes.
Okay. And that this would cause a little tension and frustration?
No.
You did not tell?
I would either write her a check right then and there for what I owed her,
Okay.
or go to an ATM machine and cash out.
Okay, so having to settle up with Ms. Bergfeld later did not cause any tension or frustration?
No, ma'am.
Okay. did you tell Investigator McClellan that it did cause tension?
I don't believe if I said anything like that, that wasn't the way it should have been meant. If she stayed longer, I paid her.
Okay.
And that was it.
Well, and to be clear, I think the words that you might have used with Investigator McClellan was that she and you bumped heads over this. Did you say that?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Sorry. Maybe it was the negotiation we bumped heads over, how much it was going to be. Maybe that's where we're going with that.
That how much it should be?
Yeah, I'm trying to help you out there with that, but I don't.
Well, that's
and
okay.
We never had a problem with money.
Okay, so you never bumped heads with Ms. Bergfeld over
No.
money? Okay. Do you know Christy Steves?
I do.
When did you meet Christy Steves?
About the same time as Paige, she was also escorting.
Okay, so you met Christy Steves in about 2000? Isn't that when you?
No, it was later.
Okay.
I had known Paige probably a year. And Christy was just it was a young lady that was involved.
Okay. So your testimony is that you knew Ms. Bergfeld for about a year and then met Ms. Steves?
Approximately, yeah.
Okay. So then how did you meet Ms. Steves?
Paige was going to be busy. She was doing some out-of-town work, and so it was sort of a referral.
Okay. Ms. Bergfeld referred you to Ms. Steves?
She said that it'd be okay to call her.
Okay. Didn't you testify previously that you met Ms. Steves through an ad in the paper?
I got her number out of the paper, but before I did anything, I talked to Paige to make sure this girl was legit.
Oh, okay.
That's all.
So since you knew that Paige was a prostitute, you were seeing if Paige would vouch for this other woman?
Paige wasn't a prostitute. She was an escort.
Okay. And what's the difference in your mind between an escort?
In my mind, a prostitute is just going to take money for sex, whatever, and an escort there's options. We go to dinner, we could go for a walk in the park, we could go for a drive, we could walk the dog.
I see, the companionship you mentioned.
Yes, ma'am.
But all for money, right?
Yeah, people get paid for what they do.
Okay. All right, so you asked Ms. Bergfeld as an escort if she would vouch for this other woman whose name you found in the paper.
The word vouch is probably not the right word. It was just more, can I trust her?
Okay.
That thing.
So based on the information that Ms. Bergfeld provided you about Ms. Steves, your impression was that they knew each other, or Ms. Bergfeld somehow knew of Ms. Steves?
Through their profession, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So your testimony is then that you met Ms. Steves? Okay, never mind, I guess you've clarified that. Now, did you end up hiring Ms. Steves as a prostitute?
As an escort, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, I do have another question about this, just because I'm a little bit confused. Didn't you tell Investigator McClellan in 2012 when you spoke to him that you didn't even know that Ms. Steves was a prostitute?
No.
You didn't?
I told him that I didn't know that Paige was had an escort service. One of the guys at my work, after I sold her the vehicle, asked me if I knew what she
Okay.
did. I said, yes, self-pampered chef, and he enlightened me a little bit more of her other job.
Okay. So you explained to Investigator McClellan that you didn't at first know about Ms. Bergfeld's Models Inc. business, but you didn't indicate to Investigator McClellan that you had no idea that Ms. Steves was a prostitute.
Well, I knew she was an escort based on where I got her phone number.
Right, okay. Now, did you have sex with Ms. Steves for money?
Yes.
And where did the two of you meet and have sex?
It was at a small car dealership I was running here locally,
Okay. Anywhere else?
my house.
Anywhere else?
No, that's it.
What dealership was that?
It's called Automax.
Where was
So,
it?
It was down by, like across from Belco Credit Union, Sportsman's Warehouse area.
Okay, so on Highway 6 and 50?
Yes, ma'am.
Near the mall?
Close?
And, okay. Were you friends with Ms. Steves like you were with Ms. Bergfeld?
No, ma'am.
Were you at all friends with Ms. Steves?
I guess, I mean, we weren't enemies, so.
Okay.
At the time we met.
Did you tell law enforcement that you were somewhat friends with Ms. Steves?
Sure. I'm sure I did.
Okay. But you were closer friends with Ms. Bergfeld than Ms. Steves?
We're talking two different people.
Okay.
So, yeah. I couldn't have confided in Miss Steve's the way I confided with Paige.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that friendship thing there.
Okay. But although your friendship was closer with Ms. Bergfeld, you did have a friendship and a sexual relationship with both Ms. Steves and Ms. Bergfeld.
Yes,
Were you very fond of Paige?
I was.
And were you fond of Christy? Ms. Steves, I should say.
No.
Would you say no?
No.
You weren't fond of her at all?
That was more business than pleasure, or than friendship, I guess is the right word. The relationships are not comparable, I guess is where I'm going with that.
Okay. Not comparable. Got it. Did you ever talk to Ms. Steves about Ms. Bergfeld?
It came up.
Didn't you tell... Oh, never mind. Had you... Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. D'Amico, to keep going back and forth here a little bit. I'm just getting a little bit confused. Didn't you tell law enforcement that you had never met...
Objection leading.
Okay. Have you ever... I'm sorry, I will withdraw that question and rephrase. Have you ever said before that you had never met anyone like Ms. Bergfeld until you had met Ms. Steves?
No, ma'am.
Okay. You didn't tell Ms. Steves that directly herself?
No.
Now, did you ever work at the Kia dealership?
I did.
Okay. When did you work there?
Oh, here we go with the date thing.
Do you think you worked there in 2006?
Yeah.
Okay. Where did you live in 2006?
Around 30 and F Road for a while, and then we moved up to East Piazza, which is North Grand Junction.
Okay, when you lived at 30 and F Roads, was that on Ronlin Drive?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is your cell phone number?
970-985-1008.
And how long have you had that number?
It's about 17 years.
Okay, so obviously you had that number in 2006.
Yes. Sorry.
And do you have a son?
Yes, I do.
How old is he?
28.
When you first met Ms. Bergfeld, did you have a problem with cocaine?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And did that continue into 2007?
Yes, it did.
And was it the case that when you couldn't get cocaine, you also used methamphetamine?
Not back then, no. Just not back then.
Okay, what is back then?
Well, in those times, it was cocaine only.
Okay. Didn't you tell the investigator in 2012 that when you couldn't get cocaine, you used methamphetamine?
Yeah, but you were talking about 2007.
Well, when you talked to the investigator in 2012, weren't you talking to him about 2007 when you knew Ms. Bergfeld?
I guess I was talking more in the present at that time.
Okay. So in 2012, you switched to methamphetamine?
Well, I didn't switch.
Objection relevance.
What's the relevance?
Well, Your Honor, we pre-litigated this, and the court had already found that this information about Mr. D'Amico's drug use was relevant and was admissible under the relaxed 404B standard for alternate suspects.
Mr. Rubenstein.
Mr. Chairman, objecting to discussion about what he was doing in 2012.
The objection's overruled. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. D'Amico, I'm just trying to clarify if the methamphetamine use was not in 2007 when you were with Ms. Bergfeld.
In '07, I would say no.
Okay. Now, was Ms. Bergfeld and Ms. Steves the only prostitutes that you hired?
No, they were not the only escorts I hired.
Okay. How many other escorts did you hire?
3, 4 different ones.
Okay. How many other prostitutes did you hire?
Ma'am, I never hired a prostitute.
Okay, you only hired escorts?
That's it.
Okay,
If you look in the yellow pages, that's all there is.
I
There's
see.
nothing under prostitutes.
I gotcha, okay. Didn't you testify before that you maybe hired 5 other prostitutes?
I think that's what I just told you.
I thought, okay,
Yeah.
well, I beg your pardon, I thought you
No,
said a
that's fine.
few. Now, have you ever hit a woman, Mr. D'Amico?
No.
Have you been married twice?
Yes.
Who was your first wife?
Mary D'Amico,
And who was your second?
Lisa
wife?
Whalen.
Okay. Did you commit domestic violence against both of those women?
No, I was charged and arrested for it, and then both those charges were dropped once the investigators had done their thing. Lisa told them Christmas Eve night that she hit me and threw something at me, that I didn't touch her. I was still arrested because I put my fist through my wall. So they got me for property damage. Had she not been on the mortgage, I wouldn't have gone to jail. And that Monday when we came, after spending 6 days, because it was a Christmas holiday, after spending 6 days in the jail, they dropped everything. Then they wanted me to press charges against her, and I told them I would not.
Okay. I want to start with your first wife.
Okay?
Wasn't there an incident with her where you threw things around the house and screamed in her face?
You asked me if I touched her. So yes, I'm sure I got loud and I may have thrown something.
Okay. Did you also unplug the phone as she was about to call the police?
Don't remember.
Did you push her around the house?
No, ma'am.
Now, turning to your second wife, Ms. Whalen. Now, she was a common law wife, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you ever push her?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever pick her up and carry her around the house and throw her on the couch?
That would have been Mary, but I didn't pick her up and run around the house and throw her. I moved her so I could get out the front door.
Okay.
All I did was just picked her up and rotated her back.
Was there an incident with Ms. Whalen where you banged a claw hammer on the table right next to her?
It wasn't right next to her. She was in another room.
Oh, okay.
So
So you were in the dining room banging on the table and she was in the next room?
I'm not banging specifically. I just refinished this table and she wasn't very happy about the way it came out and she walked away and I got pissed and I hit the table.
Okay.
And I could fix it and refinish it the way she wanted.
Okay. Now, when she came back in, did you then throw her on the couch and choke her?
No, ma'am.
Didn't you, now that incident was investigated by law enforcement, right?
Both of them were, I believe.
Okay. And you spoke with law enforcement at that time? This is the claw hammer incident I'm specifically referring to. Didn't you talk to law enforcement then?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay. And didn't you tell the law enforcement back then that you admitted that you grabbed Ms. Whalen by the neck and held her down?
No, ma'am.
A few years later in 2000, well, I know you're not great with dates, but would you say this claw hammer incident was in 2001?
That would probably be about a good time frame, yeah.
Okay. In 2008, did the police get called out again?
Yeah, that was for Christmas
Yeah.
Eve.
And in that Christmas Eve incident, did you push Ms. Whalen up against the wall?
No, ma'am.
Did you punch the wall by where she was at?
No, ma'am, she wasn't close when I punched the wall.
And did you throw things around the house at that point?
No, ma'am, she did.
She did, okay. Did you also, you mentioned that you had sex with Ms. Steves at a car dealership on, or no, I'm sorry. You indicated that you met Ms. Bergfeld at Automax, okay.
No,
Grand Valley Auto Sales.
no. Modern Classic is where I met Paige.
Where?
Modern Classic Motors.
Oh, okay. In 2007, didn't you also work at Grand Valley Auto Sales?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the one by the mall?
There are different locations, but he has one there, yeah.
How far away would you say Grand Valley Auto Sales, where you worked on Highway 6 and 50, was away from 23 and G Road?
Probably about 5 miles, I guess.
Did you kill Ms. Bergfeld?
No, ma'am.
Did you tell Ms. Steves that you had?
No, ma'am.
Can we approach, Your Honor?
Yes, sir. Feel free to stretch.
Tell Ms. Steves that you had killed Ms. Bergfeld?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay. Did you tell Ms. Steves that you had killed Ms. Bergfeld by putting her through a wood chipper?
No, what I said to her was, had I done this, that they wouldn't have found her, because I would have put her through a wood chipper. And if you refer back to the movie Fargo, that's where this came from. So,
Okay.
and she's not here to protect herself, but she had a lot of things law-wise that she was in trouble for, and I think she just, like I told you the first time, she just took this and ran with it to maybe take some pressure off of herself.
Okay.
But I did say what you asked, but she took it totally, I never said I killed. And I
Okay.
said, had I.
Okay. So in the context of talking to Ms. Steves, you said, if you had killed Ms. Bergfeld, your friend and this person who you spent time with, you would have killed her by putting her in a wood chipper.
I'm going to object. I don't believe that the witness said anything about friend and having spent time with, so it's either leading or it's Ms. Smith adding things to what was said.
I
The
thought,
objection sustained.
okay. So just to be clear, were you friends with Ms. Bergfeld?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you care about Ms. Bergfeld?
Yes, ma'am.
And so you didn't tell Ms. Steves that you had killed Ms. Bergfeld, right?
No, ma'am.
Okay, but you told Ms. Steves that if you had killed Ms. Bergfeld, a friend of yours. This is,
Objection, leading.
I believe I'm just trying to clarify the testimony.
The objection sustained.
Did you tell Ms. Steves that if you had killed Ms. Bergfeld, this is the way you would have done it with a wood chipper?
The reference to the wood chipper, again, had to do with the movie, and I think the way you're making it sound is that I may have had intentions of possibly killing Paige, totally out of context. I would not have hurt Paige. And I'm just, so take a meth addict at the time, and there was issues with, and again, she's not here, I hate to even talk about her with her not being here, but she was in a bad place in her life. She had lost her kids and everything, Miss Steves.
Let me ask you this, Mr. D'Amico, because I understand you want to talk about Ms. Steves' situation, but what I want to be clear about is what you told Ms. Steves, okay?
I never said it, go ahead and say it again, and we'll straighten it up.
So I understand that you did not confess to killing Ms. Bergfeld to Ms. Steves. What you were doing instead was talking about how you would have killed Ms. Bergfeld.
I said, again, the way I said it and the way she took it and ran with it, I can see. I see your point. Ma'am, I have no tendencies to murder anybody, and that's what you're trying to throw, what she's saying. And she took it and twisted it a lot to take some pressure off herself, like I said, so.
Well, and I guess I wanted to just clarify what you testified to, because I thought your testimony.
If I killed her.
If you killed her.
But you're making it sound like I may have a premeditation towards it, and there was nothing that way.
Okay. So what you were trying to explain to Ms. Steves is.
I wasn't trying to even explain, it was in conversation.
Was it actually in a conversation in which you were attempting to threaten Ms. Steves?
Why would I threaten somebody and then tell them I did something like that? Or brief to it? Makes no sense.
Okay.
I'm a pretty smart guy, ma'am.
So the question is, was this in a conversation where you were threatening Ms. Steves?
No, ma'am, I think we were doing drugs together and having sex.
Okay. And in that context, you brought up how you would kill your friend.
Ma'am, I didn't bring up how I would kill my friend. She asked me if I had anything to do with it, and I said no.
Did you, in this conversation with Ms. Steves, also tell Ms. Steves that you will put Ms. Steves' body through a wood chipper?
Absolutely not.
Okay. In 2012, when Investigator McClellan comes to talk to you, did you know that he was talking to you about the investigation into the disappearance of Ms. Bergfeld?
Not at first, but he had called me to ask me to come down to the sheriff's department.
Okay.
And within 12 minutes of him calling me, I was there.
Okay. And then when did you realize that he was asking you questions about Ms. Bergfeld's disappearance?
Probably about 15, 20 minutes into it.
Okay. And when you realized that he was investigating the disappearance of Ms. Bergfeld, did you want to provide him with good quality information so that he could investigate the disappearance of your friend?
By all means.
Okay. Did you tell Investigator McClellan that you had never even made this offhand comment to Ms. Steves about putting Ms. Bergfeld through a wood chipper?
About that time that conversation came up, here you are at work, you get a call, you go to the investigator's office for a couple questions, and that came up, and about that time I got scared about it.
Okay.
It's just common, and he said he wasn't going to arrest me that day or anything, and so I didn't have to stay. I was just volunteering what I knew.
Okay.
But I did get a little nervous about it, yeah.
Okay. And did you get a little nervous about it because you knew that he was questioning you about your potential involvement?
Sure, yeah.
And so instead of explaining to Investigator McClellan what you've tried to explain today, you just denied that you made any of those comments?
I didn't have an attorney present, and I was done answering his questions at that time.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so yes, you did deny making any of those offhand comments about a wood chipper.
No, I didn't deny. It wasn't anything to deny.
Okay. Well, did you ever tell him? I mean, he's asking you about these statements, right?
Right.
And didn't you tell him that you never made those statements?
Well, ma'am, yeah, I just explained that to you. What I went in for was to answer a couple of questions.
Sure.
And I didn't know that they were going to be aimed at me or any conversation that I had with a meth escort, as we may have. And so I did get nervous, and I just told him that that's all I had to say at that time. And, you know, if he needed to talk to me again, it would just be with an attorney present, which is my right. The same way that we talked that Sunday, I was very open with you and your team.
Okay.
I had nothing to hide.
Okay, so now obviously, the district attorney is not charging you with the murder of Ms. Bergfeld, right?
No, he's not.
Okay, so is it the case that now you feel more free to talk about these statements than you did with Investigator McClellan in 2000?
Well, as time goes on, you know, you have a better idea of what's going on. We're talking about 12 minutes from my work to his office, McClellan's office, to answer a couple questions. And then it just got a little personal. And, you know, even saying that I had slept with Paige or with Miss Steves, at that point I was still married, and it was uncomfortable.
Okay.
So that was it.
Okay. So when law enforcement it's when law enforcement was accusing you of potentially, or questioning you about potentially being involved with the death of Ms. Bergfeld, that's when you decided not to give as much information as you are now willing to provide. Is that correct?
At that time, yeah.
Well, I guess I'm asking about this time, because this time you're more willing to explain these statements, right, than you were to the investigator?
I was called. I got there 12 minutes later to answer a couple questions, and it started getting to the point where, like I said, it was more personal. And at that time, I told him I had nothing else to say.
Okay.
And he let me go.
Now, have you also claimed that these statements that you made about Ms. Bergfeld, that you would put Ms. Bergfeld through a wood chipper, have you also sort of explained that those were jokes?
Ma'am, I've used that cliche on my kids and guys at work, and it's the dumbest 10 words that ever came out of my mouth.
Okay.
So, you know, it was all cliche, and it's just been taken and expanded and misconstrued totally.
Did you have a lot of respect for Ms. Bergfeld?
Oh, yes, ma'am, I did.
Do you think what happened to her is a tragedy?
Of course it is.
And were you talking to Ms. Steves about, obviously you were talking to Ms. Steves about these wood chipper, putting Ms. Bergfeld through a wood chipper after she disappeared, right?
Well, sure, I imagine.
Okay. So you were using this cliche and this joke to talk about the death of...
We're wearing this out.
Well, I just want to be clear.
I said something that was taken and just totally turned around, and I've said it to my kids. I've said it to my guys at work, and they're all still there. And it's just somebody with an issue with, in this case, she took it and just ran
Sure.
with this thing.
And I understand you want to keep talking about Ms. Steves.
I
and
don't
her
want to talk about Miss
situation.
Steves. I want to talk about
But-
Paige and who killed her.
Okay,
So there.
okay. And in talking about Paige and her death, you felt comfortable at the time bringing up this wood chipper cliche that you always use.
I didn't feel comfortable bringing it up. It was something that I've used for 10, 15 years of my, in daily use. So it wasn't, no, it's very uncomfortable saying something like that. But nobody knew what happened to Paige at that time. She could have been in New York with some rich guy in a penthouse
Okay.
for the rest of her life, and we never would have saw her. So no, it's very uncomfortable now. At the time, it was just verbiage between two people getting high and having sex.
Would you agree that you have told law enforcement different things about your involvement with Ms. Bergfeld in this case than you're testifying to today?
No, as time goes on, you think about more things too. I mean, we've had, since the first trial, it was, that went bad on us, if you may. You think about more things, I mean, it's something that I think anybody that's involved in this is going to think about
So
it more.
your memory's gotten better.
It's not a matter of my memory getting better. It's a matter of just, you have an opportunity to think about things more.
Okay, so now you've figured out that you didn't,
Objection leading.
Objection sustained.
is one of the difference in statements that you've made, I guess I just want to be clear about some of the things that it appears your memory has gotten better about, okay? So just to be clear, has your memory gotten better about,
Objection assumes facts, not an evidence. He said it's not about his memory getting better, it's about him thinking, having thought about more things.
The objection's overruled.
so the first thing that your memory's gotten better about is how you met Ms. Bergfeld, right?
I can't answer that, ma'am, because it's not a
Okay.
matter of that. It's a matter of, again, I can pick up the paper and look at it, and something just, you see something and it sticks, or it makes you think about something else, or opens up a different door. So that's what I'm talking about. It's not a matter of, I woke up with a light bulb above my head going, oh, I remember this now. It's not that.
And is another thing that you've gotten, your memory's gotten better about is whether or not you'd talked to Ms. Steves about knowing Ms. Bergfeld was a prostitute.
I would have never even talked about Paige in that sense with her.
Mr. D'Amico, do you have a felony conviction for theft?
27 years ago.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Was that 1994 then?
Whatever that adds up to.
Okay. And was that for embezzling money from your employer?
It was not embezzling money. There was five stores. I worked for 84 Lumber, and we had packages that you bought, garage packages, and they have them to the nail, so that the corporation knows exactly what's going out the door. You come in and order a 24 by 24 garage, they know what's going out. And I had people come in and didn't want the big doors, the 16 by 7, they wanted a couple 8 by 7s. So I called a couple managers, because I was doing the management side of it. And in my district, I said, what do you guys do with this? And they said, we change the lumber out so that your inventory stays the same. And really, it's at the end of the year that you'll see the difference, that you have maybe 4 16 by 7 doors, and you shouldn't. And you should have 8 by 7s, but you don't, but it all pans out in the money. So I did it that way. All 5 of us were in the corporate office, filed charges against us.
Okay.
And we all pled guilty, and just, because we did do what they said we did.
Okay, and that included falsifying receipts?
Well, yeah, I just told you that, we changed the package, that it would change the products going out. So, yeah.
And did that activity that you just described end up in a loss of $1,600 to the company?
Yeah, if you put in the lumber business, you have so much that you can write off every year, because it's just going to go bad. Wood twist, wood splits. So there's a lot of times you have So you're gonna have some loss. When you take a 2x4 8-footer and exchange it for 2x4 16, exchange it for 2x4 8s, 8-footers are cheaper than a 16-foot. So there would be some loss based on cost there, but the actual footage would not be a loss.
Okay.
So product was there, it was just a matter of paying more for the board that should have been there. And it could have worked the other way as well, but
And you deny killing Ms. Bergfeld, right?
yes, ma'am.
And you would like the jury to believe that?
Yes, ma'am, I would.
And that's despite the fact that you
Objection
tell,
leading.
The objection's overruled at this point.
and that's despite the fact that you have said different things at different times to different people about your involvement with Ms. Bergfeld?
Objection leading.
Overruled.
Say, I'm
You
sorry.
can answer, so.
What was the
You need to
question?
Repeat the question.
Yes, please.
Okay, you want the jury to believe that you did not kill Ms. Bergfeld, even though you've told different people different things at different times about your involvement with her?
I don't think it's a matter of different things at different times. I think it's in addition to.
Okay.
But I did not kill Paige. I mean, that's the bottom line.
And do you know what would happen if you did admit to killing Ms. Bergfeld there on the stand?
I would imagine they'd handcuff me and take me to jail.
Okay. And you've been to jail before, right, you said?
Twice, yes.
Okay. And is it fair to say that you don't want to go back?
You ever been in jail, ma'am?
I asked the
I'm sorry.
questions.
No, I don't want to go back.
Can you tell the jury where you were and what you were doing on June 28th of 2007?
No, ma'am, I can't.
What about July 1st of 2007? You have to say yes or no out loud.
No.
May I have just a moment?
Yes, you may. Thank you.
I do just have another question for you, Mr. D'Amico. Regarding that felony conviction you were explaining about the lumber, do you feel like you did anything wrong there?
Of course I do.
Okay.
I didn't check with the right people. I checked with other managers to see what they were doing in my region. And so I went with what they did. I should have called my corporate office and found out.
Okay.
So I paid the price. I lost a job that back then, in the early 90s, was paying $150,000. I had one of the #1 stores in the nation for sales. I lost a really good thing.
Okay, so just to be clear, it sounds like you recognize you did something wrong, but you thought it was sort of justified because you'd gotten some permission from your...
Had I got permission from the corporate office, I'd probably, that's the way I should have went.
I see.
I just asked other gentlemen that had been in the business, managers for a long time, had their own stores. You pick up the phone and say, hey, how do you guys handle this?
Okay. And so for that, you pled guilty.
Ma'am, what's this have to do with Paige's disappearance?
Well, again, Mr. D'Amico,
I'm
I
sorry.
asked the questions. I just want to be clear that you pled guilty and you were convicted of
And
that, right?
I served no time, I paid all my fines, and I did all the stuff that was asked of me in 6 months versus a year.
Okay, great. Good for you. All right, I have nothing else. Thank you.
Mr. Rubenstein, cross-examination.
Good morning, Mr. D'Amico.
Good morning, sir.
You seem like you're getting frustrated with Miss Smith's questions.
It's just that everything that comes up seems to get twisted just a little bit, or, it's just,
Such as the suggestion that you haven't told her these things before?
yes,
For example, you've testified under oath in this case before, right?
yes, sir,
In this courtroom?
yes, sir,
You sat at that witness stand?
yes, sir,
She asked you questions?
yes, sir.
During a prior time, did she specifically ask you, it's page 111 of the transcript, and how did you know her? Did she ask you that before?
Yes.
And your answer before, under oath, was my initial meeting with her was actually a car sale at Modern Classic Motors.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's part of your frustration that you've already told her all the things you're telling her today?
Objection, may we approach?
What's the basis for your objection?
May I have a second?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, my objection is that I believe that I object to prosecution asking questions as, to imply that my questions are improper, to cast aspersion on my character, and to indicate that I am repetitive because I've previously asked this witness questions at a prior proceeding.
The objection's overruled. He's allowed to explore the issue of the witness's frustration on the witness stand, so the objection's overruled. The request to approach is denied.
Mr. D'Amico, she also asked you whether or not you considered Paige to be your best friend, is that right?
Yes, she did.
And was your answer, I wouldn't use the word best friend, Paige was a very good friend?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you were interviewed 4 years ago, 5 years ago, something
Yes.
like that, by law enforcement?
Yes.
Okay. And you indicated that that was sort of out of the blue, you didn't even know what the topic was, is that right?
I didn't know.
Okay. Have you had some time to think about this case since then?
Yes, sir, I have.
Have you had some time to think about your relationship with Ms. Bergfeld since then?
Sure I have.
Okay. Now, you're here testifying, are you under any grant of immunity?
No, sir.
And you understand that the defense has named you as an alternate suspect in the case?
Yes.
Okay. Did you meet with the defense without the prosecution there to do an interview?
Yes, they called me and we set up an appointment. It was a Sunday morning, like early Sunday morning, which worked for everybody's schedule, but voluntarily.
Did
I
you
went-
know at the time that they had named you as an alternate suspect?
Yes.
Now, I want to talk about this wood chipper statement.
Sorry.
Would you agree with me that a lot of people would not find that very amusing?
It's not amusing. Based on where it's at right now, it's not amusing at all.
Why have you said it to so many people?
You know, if I watched, I don't really know how to answer that other than, you know, how many people have you, as you grew up, said, go ahead and make my day from watching a movie? So some of those things just stick in your head. For whatever reason, it's stuck. It's unstuck. I'll never say it again. You know?
Tell us about the context. Where were you with Miss Steves when you said that?
Well, we were involved in a call, and I want to say it was at the dealership. It would have been at the dealership.
Okay, so you called for an escort appointment?
Actually, she had stopped by that day, and we talked a little bit, and then she went and dropped off her kids. She came back after I closed. Yes, sir.
Do you recall why she came back? Was it for an escort appointment, or was it
Yes.
for? Did she also want drugs?
I'm sorry?
Did she also want drugs?
Anytime she could have them, she wanted them.
Did the two of you do drugs?
Yes,
Were both of you high at the point of this conversation?
yes.
About how many years ago was this conversation? Do you recall?
At least 8, right?
Do you recall, was this before or after Miss Bergfeld's remains were found?
This would have been before her remains were found.
After she went missing?
Yes.
Before
Yes.
her remains were found?
Yes.
Okay, so at the time you said this, you had no idea where her body was?
No, sir, I didn't.
As part of the investigation, you were interviewed about your prior relationships with your wife, well, I guess your actual wife and your common law wife?
Yes, sir.
I shouldn't say actual, they're both actual
Gotcha.
wives, right? Those relationships ended, I imagine, as most relationships end, not because things are going well, right?
Yeah, you know, I mean, they're both very good people, prominent positions with their jobs here locally, and when I had my addiction full force, it was my fault. You know, they both at some point said it's that or this, and I chose the wrong thing twice.
That or this, meaning it's
Drugs
or them?
or our relationship. Yeah.
Okay. During the course of those, I imagine you fought with them lots of times.
Usually on the phone, the doors were locked to try and get back in the house. Does that make sense? A lot of this was over the phone,
You got locked out.
most of the time, yeah.
Did one of those fights involve you trying to get back into your house?
No.
No.
I never tried to get back in when they were mad, if that makes sense, because that's just throwing fuel on a fire, I would imagine.
You were interviewed about your phone records
Yes, sir.
and all the different phones that you could have used to contact Miss Bergfeld's phones.
Yes.
Do you recall the phone that you called her on? Was that her Models Inc. phone?
Yes.
Did she have more than one phone?
I'd have to say yes. Most of them do. That's terrible to say, but, different places, depending on where they travel and stuff.
The one that you called, is that the one that she would list in the newspaper with
Yes.
the Models Inc. number?
Yes.
Okay. Did you give law enforcement all of the phone numbers of every one of your home phones, work phones, and cell phones?
Yes, and they already had records of it, too. They had some records of phone numbers.
You sounded like you didn't recall exactly if it was 3 or 4 or 5 months before she disappeared, Miss Bergfeld disappeared, that you last saw her.
Right.
Would it be accurate that your phone records should not appear anywhere within at least more than a month of her Models Inc. phone?
That would be right. Yeah, that would be right to say.
You hadn't contacted her at all?
No. She was traveling a lot, so she just wasn't here much in Junction, so.
Tell us why is it that you thought of Miss Bergfeld differently than you thought of, for example, Miss Steves?
Well, from a business side of it, she ran it like a business. And, there was no getting off the track with Paige. She didn't drink. If she drank, she'd maybe a glass of wine. She didn't do drugs. She was easy to talk to. She's a very beautiful woman inside and out. And so it just made it easier to feel that way about Paige. And it really wasn't it's not a front. That's just who Paige was. Never heard bad about Paige, if you may.
Sounds like you respected her business as being more professional than the
It was
others.
very professional, and that's why a lot of the other women in that business had problems with Paige, because she was so good at what she did, and there was no deriving off of how it worked. She was going to spend time with her kids, specifically. She had time to do her other rubber maid or whatever, pampered chef, and she ran it like a real business. And she's very successful at it.
How do you feel about her disappearance?
Breaks my heart.
Do you miss her?
Sure do.
Do you have anything to do with her disappearance at all?
No, sir, I didn't.
Do you have anything to do with her car being burnt up?
No, sir.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Ms. Smith, redirect.
Mr. D'Amico, did you supply Ms. Steves with drugs?
I don't deal drugs, so if I had it, I shared it with her.
Oh, okay. And did you see Ms. Bergfeld less and less leading up to her disappearance?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and why was that?
Just the way her business was moving and the direction her business was going in. She was leaving and seeing other clients
Okay.
in different states for a week at a time and stuff. So when she got back, she didn't have a whole lot of time other than for her kids and take care of her financials and whatever else.
So you mentioned that other women in the business, so other escorts, had a problem with Ms. Bergfeld?
Didn't
That's
have a
just-
problem with her. The problem they had is they wanted, when you're MetLife or you're a local agent, you want to be MetLife. You want to be the best of the best. And she was good at what she did, business-wise, client-wise, keeping her personal relationship and her business separated. And the other girls, she wasn't doing it to take care of a drug habit and pay a babysitter. Okay, she
Let me just stop you there, Mr. D'Amico. All I'm trying to do is clarify if the other escorts, I guess what, you had told Mr. Rubenstein that the other, I thought you had told them that some other ladies had a problem with Ms. Bergfeld. Is that because?
Not a problem.
Let me
Okay,
finish
sorry.
my question.
Sorry.
So did you mean by that because Ms. Bergfeld was very successful and very professional? She was the MetLife, I think you said?
Okay,
And
that's
then the
all right.
other women were less successful and less professional? Is that what you meant? That's all I'm
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to ask.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you tell law enforcement about these other women that knew of Ms. Bergfeld's success and maybe had a problem or had a problem with this success?
No, ma'am.
Okay. That's all I have.
Mr. Rubenstein, recross.
Jealous, right? They were jealous of her professionalism?
Exactly. When you're at the top, they all want to take you down.
Is the reason you didn't tell law enforcement about it is because you didn't think it was rising to the level of jealousy that one of them went out and killed her?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it didn't seem important to you for the
I
discussion
didn't
you were
think there
in?
was any physical issue, that Paige would be physically hurt by any of these girls. They just didn't like her because she was so successful.
Nothing
So,
further, thank you.
All right.
Ms. Smith, other questions for the witness?
No.
Is he under subpoena?
He is, and I'd just like to keep him under subpoena just for probably this morning.
All right. You're free to go at this point, Mr. D'Amico, but still under subpoena. Please stay in touch with the lawyers in case
Okay.
they need you to come back.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next defense witness, Mr. Colvin.
Judge, at this time, the defense is going to request the court take judicial notice of a portion of pleading 16. I think I should probably approach to make my record
Okay,
on this.
thank you. Feel free to stretch. Is anybody in need of a break? We're kind of right in the middle of the morning session. Maybe we'll just go ahead and take our morning recess. Please remember all the instructions for the recesses. We'll see you back in about 10 minutes, please. Thank you. Please rise for our jury. Thank you. You can be seated if you wish. And for the record, our jury has left the courtroom. Mr. Colvin.
Judge, the defense is requesting the court take judicial notice of specifically the order in pleading 16. Pleading 16 was the alternate suspect motion that was filed in this case. What we want the court to take judicial notice of is the fact that the defense requested permission of the court and was in fact granted permission of the court to name Mr. D'Amico an alternate suspect. The reason that this is relevant is prosecution in their first cross-examination specifically asked Mr. D'Amico something to the effect of, did he know the defense was naming him as an alternate suspect? I'm afraid I may have misheard prosecution. It sounded to me like he said named, but it may have been he said claimed. Either way, the intent of the question was to diminish the fact and make light of the fact that Mr. D'Amico is in fact an alternate suspect in this case by attributing the fact of his alternate suspect status to the defense takes away from the fact that he is not only named an alternate suspect by the defense, that is after the court has specifically found pursuant to the law that there is grounds for that. So we are asking the court to take judicial notice of the court's own order finding that there is a legal basis for evidence to be presented regarding Mr. D'Amico's status as an alternate suspect.
My notes show that Mr. Rubenstein used the word named as an
I wasn't
alternate
sure.
suspect, but that's how I heard it anyway.
I believe I did use the word named. I think Mr. Colvin is misattributing the purpose of my question or the effect of my question. The purpose of the question, and the court should be able to understand this from the context of it, is that this was going to whether or not Mr. D'Amico was being cooperative and whether or not he submitted to an interview by the defense, knowing that they were saying that he was the one who committed this offense, or naming him as an alternate suspect to committing the offense, and nevertheless he submitted to an interview. At no point did I do anything that would diminish the level of it, and I think it's completely improper, and I don't think the defense has any case law that would support the idea that the court should be telling the jury about whether or not there was sufficient evidence to permit a legal designation. That is absolutely, in my mind, improper, and I don't think there's anything that would support that sort of instruction or suggestion.
Mr. Colvin?
Well, with all due respect to the prosecution, I think that they are incorrect. The law states that, in fact, it is appropriate to discuss Mr. D'Amico as an alternate suspect. That was the finding of this court. Prosecution's attempts to make this simply the defense casting aspersions on Mr. D'Amico, and I accept at face value what prosecution believes the intention of their question was. It doesn't change the fact that the question as it was presented, in fact, implies that the status of alternate suspect is nothing more than some kind of defense facade. We're asking the court to take judicial notice of the law. The law in this case, and the legal finding of this court, is that it is appropriate to introduce evidence of Mr. D'Amico as an alternate suspect. That's not us saying that. That is the law. And so I do think it's absolutely appropriate for the court to take judicial notice of a finding of law, and that is what we're asking the court to do.
Any other argument you'd like to make, Mr. Rubenstein?
Do you think this would be akin to us introducing evidence that the court found probable cause at a preliminary hearing, or that the court found probable cause for a warrant, or that the court found that we had met by a preponderance of evidence that a prior act occurred for a 404B purpose? The level of information necessary for the court to make a finding that something is authorized to be presented is not appropriate for the jury to hear about. If the defense is merely asking the court to take judicial notice that he's been named an alternate suspect, that's very, very different than the court instructing the jury that they have met some sort of a legal standard to do so, and confusing the jury about what that means or what the implications are. And I will remind the court that the context of that was that Mr. D'Amico was cooperative with law enforcement when they went to interview him about his involvement in this, that he met with the defense when they interviewed him, naming him as an alternate suspect, and that he's here not testifying under any grant of immunity, all of which relate to his cooperation in the face of being potentially accused of being the person who did this, and it was not offered under any other context. It was a line of questions that this defense interview was part of.
Do you have any other argument, Mr. Colvin?
No, sir.
No. All right, thank you. I agree with the prosecution in that it would be interjecting the court into, and really, I think that it lends credibility to one side. If the court were to interject and say, for example, that, like Mr. Rubenstein pointed out, that the court found probable cause, I think that gives some, at least a juror could conclude, well, the court thinks that there's some basis for these charges. I think that the opposite, or I shouldn't say the opposite, I think the same conclusion could be drawn if I were to tell the jurors that, well, Mr. D'Amico meets the standard for an alternate suspect, and so it's the court that decided that the defense could present this evidence as an alternate suspect. I don't think that that would be proper for the court to, in some ways, lend its credibility towards the defense argument. So I'm denying the request to instruct the jury or find judicial notice with regard to pleading number 16. Anything else? Mr. Colvin?
No.
Mr. Rubenstein?
Nothing further.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Should we just take a short break, please? All right, thank you.